Hey there, everyone. We're now ready for ES10, or ECMAScript 2019. That's right. Every year, they're constantly trying to improve the language, that is JavaScript, and now ES10 is the latest. So what new features did we get in this new version of JavaScript? Well, luckily for you, there aren't too many. So let's start off with my favorite one. And it's called flat. And flat is a method that we can use on arrays. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say I have a array variable that contains a very exciting array of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I now run array.flat, let's copy this code and run it here. What do you think will happen? Well, absolutely nothing. We returned a new array, it looks like, but it looks the exact same. But this is where flat gets exciting. Imagine if this had nested arrays. So for example, 2 and 3 were its own array, and then 4 and 5 were also an array nested inside of a bigger array. If I now copy this, and let's call this array 2. If I now copy this and paste it in here, hey, check that out. We get a new array that is flattened. That is, there's no nested arrays anymore. All right, let's keep going then. What happens if we have array 3? And array 3 is even more nested than we had before. Let's say we have 1, 2, 3, like this. And then maybe we'll have 5 that is, well, nested pretty deep, like that. So now we have an array, there's another array, and inside of that there's another array. What do you think will happen here? I'm going to copy and paste, run this code. All right. So I get a new array back, but we see that there's actually not a completely flat array. Instead, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, but then 5 was only flattened one level. So we essentially just removed these brackets. Now, the interesting thing with flat is that we can tell it how many layers to flatten the array. So if we go back to our example, and in here, the default was 1. But if we change this to 2 now, well, let's copy and paste. Let's refresh this and run it again. Hey, look at that. We have a completely flattened array. So in here, I can tell it how many times I want to flatten or how many layers I want to flatten the array. All right, but I have a really exciting example for you. Get ready for this. Congratulations. You just became the owner of Jurassic Park. You have a park with all these ancient creatures. And the T-Rex over here is extremely dangerous. That's why, well, it's in its own contained area of the park with a lot of barricades around because we don't want the T-Rex going wild. But here's the problem. You're a bad guy at Jurassic Park. If I asked you, hey, how can you completely flatten this array? How would you go about doing it? Pause the video, think about it. Ready for the answer? Well, we can do Jurassic Park dot flat, and then you might want to actually count how many arrays are nested in here. But there is a trick here. I could maybe just do 50. Let's see what happens. If I copy this, let's make this a little bit bigger. I refresh here, copy and paste this. Let's see what happens. Oop, and Jurassic Park should be Jurassic Park. Let's copy this again. Let's refresh. All right. All the barricades are down and the animals are now going wild. And I just randomly picked 50 because I knew that 50 wasn't, well, how many nested arrays we have. Now, in the exercise after this video, I'm going to show you a cool little trick of making sure that we can flatten to the utmost level. But that's for the exercise. Another really useful thing that you can do with flat is, let's say you get a bunch of entries. And these entries from your users come in, and maybe we get Bob, we get Sally entering their name, but then we also get a bunch of entries that are completely empty with maybe Cindy at the end here. Using flat, we can actually flatten the entries and clean up our data. So I can say entries.flat like this. And if I copy and paste this, look at that. It cleans up the data for me, which is really, really nice. All right, the next feature of ES10 is flat map. And flat map, as the name suggests, allows us to use flat function and the map function or method on an array. So let's do something fun here. Let's say we have the Jurassic Park again. And this time around, we're going to use flat map. So let's say Jurassic Park, and we'll call this new variable. Let's do const Jurassic Park chaos. And this chaos will have, well, the Jurassic Park array that we had above. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And now we can use a flat map to do something interesting. I can say for each item that we're going to flatten, we're going to get a creature. And this creature, using arrow functions, is going to get creature plus the T-Rex. So I'm going to copy the T-Rex over here. So each creature is going to get a T-Rex as a neighbor, which is, well, not good. They're all going to get eaten by the T-Rex. Is the T-Rex a carnivore? I'm not sure. You'll have to Google that on your own. All right, so we have the Jurassic Park flat map. So I'm flattening the Jurassic Park and then mapping over this flattened array and doing some sort of a map function to it. So let's see what happens. If I now copy this and I paste this in, if I now check out what Jurassic Park chaos is and I hit enter, oh boy, look at that. We have T-Rex, neighbors with all the creatures, and, well, it's absolute chaos in Jurassic Park. Flat map allows us to use the basic map function and then flattens the result to a depth of 1. All right, let's keep going. Next is a very, very simple one. Let's say you get a user email. And user email, well, gets entered a little incorrectly. So we get a bunch of spaces, and then we have eddietheeagle@gmail.com that we receive from the user. Or maybe we have user email 2. And this time around, johnnydangerous@gmail.com enters their information, but we have, again, some blank spaces. What can we do? Well, with the new ES10 feature, we can simply say user email.trim start on a string, and it will trim the beginning. And user email 2 can say trim end and trim the end of the string. So let's console.log this and see what happens. If I copy this, and make sure we declare these variables, so it'll be const, and make sure that I can spell email right. If I copy this now and enter it in here, I don't know if you can see, but now my strings don't have any blank spaces in them. If I check out user email here, you see that the blank space is still there, but the new generated string user email start won't have any blank spaces. Nice and easy. All right, we're flying through these. What's next? We only have a few more left. Actually, 2 more left. The next one is called form entries. It transforms a list of key value pairs into an object. Let me show you what I mean. Let's clear this, and let's just comment all of this. Maybe bring it down to the bottom and focus on this one. So imagine we had some user profiles that we receive. But these user profiles are formatted in the wrong way. So we have, let's say, an array, and inside of an array, we have the user profiles of a game. So we have, let's call him Commander Tom as the player name, and Commander Tom is 23 years old. Next, we have, let's say, an array of Derek Zeelander. And Derek Zeelander is, let's say, 40. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And then finally, we have an array, Hansel, and Hansel is 18. So we have these user profiles, but as arrays, they're not really useful right now. Wouldn't it be great if we can convert them into an object where each username is associated with an age? Well, this is exactly what entries is used for. We simply do object.form or from entries. So from entries. And from entries is going to receive an array like this. So let's do user profiles here and see what happens. If I copy this code, paste it in here, hey, look at that. We get an object now with Commander Tom, 23, Derek Zeelander has a key and a value of 40, and Hansel has a key of Hansel and value of 18. Now, the name might trigger something while you're watching this, because in ES8, we talked about something called entries, right? Object.entries allowed us to do, well, the exact opposite thing. So, for example, if this was now an object, if I do object entries on this object now, so let's copy and paste, refresh this, I get exactly what I had originally back. So from entries, the name from entries simply comes from, well, object.entries. All right. One last one, I promise, and then we're done. The last part is an update to a feature that we have in JavaScript, which is the try-catch block. Like this. Now, this try-catch block is something we're going to talk about a lot more when we get into the asynchronous JavaScript part of the course. But essentially, the try and catch block in JavaScript allow us to try a piece of code, and if there's any errors, to catch them. So, for example, if I do here, let's say 4 plus 5, and I run this piece of code, if I click run, I get 9. It's the exact same thing as us writing 4 plus 5. The only difference is that within this try block, we're telling JavaScript, hey, try this, and if there's any errors on line 3 here, then do something within the catch block. So I could, for example, say console.log, you messed up. And now if I do, let's say, true or true plus hi, if I copy and paste this and run this code, I get true hi because of something we've seen before, that is type coercion. So it tried this. In JavaScript, that is valid JavaScript because it turns true into a string and combines it with hi. But if we, let's say, do a variable that we haven't seen before. So instead of true, let's say we have a Bob variable. If I run this, I get the catch block, which says you messed up because, well, this threw an error, and as soon as it throws an error, it catches. And here's the thing. You actually saw a new feature here in ES10 because back in the day, before ES10, in order for this code to actually catch, you had to pass it an error object or parameter. So I could have called this whatever I want. So I had to do error like this so that I could perhaps say error. So if I copy this, refresh, and let's give Bob here so that we error out, I get you messed up, but then I also catch the error, which is a reference error. Bob is not defined. So before we had to pass it a parameter, otherwise this whole block of code, even if it was working properly, would actually error because we didn't pass it the parameter. With ES10, we have an update where you're not forced to use that parameter if you don't want to. Again, this is something we'll cover later on in the course when we talk about asynchronous JavaScript. Oh boy, that looked like a lot, but I mean, it wasn't that much, right? Nice and easy, nice and simple. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.